Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to share a little more about my experience working with children. It's so interesting and so insightful, and it can be helpful for us as well to really come to terms with some of our experiences as children and be in that healing journey of clearing our inner child experiences and reparenting. So I'd like to share a really interesting experience I had in a classroom with a 5-year-old girl. She was very quiet. She seemed very bright and she was very engaged, and she loved being there. She loved being at the school. And it was at a time when they were bringing in kids that were disabled in some way, that had lots of challenges, and it was a really cool thing to do, I feel, to get the other children used to being around children with these problems and how to be with them. It was a lot of acceptance, I feel, so that they wouldn't be freaked out if they saw someone so different or in a wheelchair. It was really helpful in that way for them to be just more accepting of other people and some of those challenges and some of those differences. So in this classroom, it was a pre-primary classroom. The kids were about 5, perhaps 5, 6, and there was a little boy that they were bringing into the classroom. He was severely autistic. He was nonverbal. He couldn't really engage, and he couldn't take general commands. He had a full-time carer, and she was with him, and the children got to see her interacting with him. They were sitting at their table doing art. The teacher would hold the pencil in his hand for him and draw on the paper and try and move his head down to watch his hand. Just simple things like that, I guess, trying to get him to engage in that way to what was happening. And he would often just be throwing his head around and not interested at all in the way that we could see. He was fine going out into the playground. The carer would be right there on hand. He could walk okay, and he was running around actually with the other kids out there. He wasn't with them, he was amongst them. He didn't engage or interact with the children. The children would say hello to him and they would interact as if that was normal, which was lovely to see, that they were just accepting Sam's different and that's how it is. He seemed fine out there in the playground. The children would have turns at bringing Sam into the classroom when it was time to come back in. The teacher would allocate a child, can you bring Sam in? They all had turns, and they'd been watching his carer. They'd call loudly into his face or talk very loudly to him, call his name very loudly, and try and get him to look them in the face. It's time to come in. And he wasn't going to be in that, so quite often the carer would just go and get him, but the kids were having a go, working on doing what they felt they could do. This particular day that I was there, this little girl, Mary, and it was Mary's turn. Can you go and get Sam in? She was happily do that. She went out to Sam, but she was quite different to the other children. She didn't look him in the face. She didn't call to him. She didn't speak to him at all. She just went up to him and put her arm against his arm and used her hand and pulled him in close to her. And he just followed her, went in with her, and she delivered him to the seat where his carer was or wherever he needed to go. I watched this a number of times where they would often ask Mary then to bring Sam in. There's everything happening, and Mary, can you bring Sam in? Because she had the most success, I guess, with him. Then there was this day, they had some celebration. It might have been close to Christmas time, perhaps. They were doing a little show for the parents where they were singing songs. They were all on the carpet, so the parents were there as well. And Mary got to bring Sam inside, and she did the usual thing of just going up next to him and wrapping her hand around his arm, and he'd come inside. And I think they were all busy and getting ready. The carer was trying to put Sam onto the carpet, and she was like, push him down, sit him down, and he'd get up, and push him down and sit him down again, and he'd get up, and put him down, and then he'd get up, and he wouldn't stay in his spot. Then the teacher said, Mary, can you have Sam with you? She just went up to him, did the same thing, locked her hand around his arm, and then he went with her, and they sat on the carpet together, sitting cross-legged next to her. And he'd go to move, she'd just put her hand on his leg, and he'd just sit back down again. And if he really tried to move out, then she would just bring him close against her arm and then just sit, and he would just sit down. He went through the whole show, they went through all the songs, and of course she was singing and she was doing all the little songs and things they were doing. And she had Sam next to her. If he was going to get up and move away, she just put her hand on him and he'd just sit quietly again. It was really cool. He was not stressed. Different times when they were getting him to do stuff, you could tell he didn't want to do it. He would become quite stressed and he'd become quite agitated and shaking his head around and not wanting to do it. He was just sitting there looking around, doing his thing. He was not stressed at all. And they finished their little show. I got to talk with Mary, and I asked her, I said, how do you know what to do with Sam? He seems to respond to you. What is it that you do, and how do you know how to do that? And she said, Sam's different to us. He sees the world differently. He doesn't experience the world like we do. It's different for him. Okay. How do you know what to do with him? And she said, I just asked his angels. So that was really cool from a 5-year-old. And I'm guessing the angels she was talking about is the inner plane guidance, is the inner plane mentor, or the inner plane guides of this little guy. I had different interactions with Mary, and she was very perceptive in that way. It was very normal for her. It was very natural for her. She referred to the higher guidance and the inner plane guidance as angels. That's a child, how she related with those energies. So that was really lovely, and I think that we can really learn from that. And much more these days. There's a lot more in the classrooms working with children, just to work with them differently, to hold space for them and to find out how to communicate, how to reach them, and what's going to work that helps them to have an experience, that helps them to start to interface or to be able to connect in some way. And if it is checking in, some of our teachers might check in with the inner plane guides and mentors of the children. How do we work with this child? How can we help this child? I think that would be cool. And that was all very normal for this particular little girl. Very spiritual, and I think we're all spiritual, because to be spiritual really means to be loving. It's about love, and of course it's about us here, our human, this human part of us, this part on the outer, this part on the surface of this beautiful planet, this lovely human embodiment is the external part of our energy. It's really soul, spirit and soul have a body. We don't have a soul or a spirit. The spirit and the soul has a body, has a human embodiment on planet Earth. And I think that's a really beautiful perspective. And it was really lovely to chat with this little one and to experience how that interaction with the inner guidance and the higher guidance could be just really quite a normal thing. So that was very lovely. That was very inspiring.